Born at Lobau on 4th June 1892, Curt Penther was marginally younger than our previous subject Eric Kuhn. Like Eric, Curt was an einjährig Freiwilliger, 1-year volunteer, indicating a similarly prosperous background. His occupation is recorded as Kaufmann, a word which can variously mean businessman, merchant, trader, or grocer. Unlike Eric, he had not risen in rank beyond private soldier by the time he went to war. Curt would, however, rise just as far as Eric and faster, and would see a great deal more action. Initially trained at the barracks of Infantry Regiment 103 in Bautzen, Curt became part of the initial intake for Reserve Infantry Regiment 242, one of numerous new units raised in Saxony as part of the new Saxon-Württemberg 27th Reserve Corps in the last days of August 1914. Each of these hastily conceived units had a broad regional character determined by the particular group of recruiting depots where it was formed. RIR 242 was raised at Zittau, Bautzen and Kamenz, all within the partly bilingual eastern region of Oberlausitz, or Upper Lusatia in English. The published casualty lists, Verlustlisten, for the regiment include hundreds of men from Curt's hometown of Lobau in the same region. Once it had been hardened in battle, RIR 242 would sometimes, entirely unofficially but proudly, be styled as the Lausitzer Garde. Oberlausitz is especially notable as the home of the Kingdom of Saxony's historical Slavic and Roman Catholic minority, the Lusatian Sorbs. However, visible signs of their culture and language in the photographic record of the Saxon regiments raised in this region are exceedingly rare, and we have seen no examples from RIR 242. Fully 75% of the enlisted men in the new regiment were young war volunteers with plenty of enthusiasm, but no military experience. This was a high proportion even in 27th Reserve Corps, and especially compared to Eric Kuhn's RIR 244, its sister regiment within 53rd Reserve Division, where only 37% were volunteers. Legally, they were all supposed to be at least 17, but some certainly got away with lying about their age, earning 27th Reserve Corps the nickname Kinderkorps. The remainder of RIR 242 consisted mostly of peacetime trained men in their 30s and 40s from the Landwehr and Landsturm, plus conscripts who had been passed over in peacetime to the Ersatzreserve list without training. It can safely be assumed that the NCOs were mainly from the Landwehr and Landsturm, while most of the officers were recalled from semi or full retirement. In short, most of RIR 242 had never trained before, and most of the remainder had done so many years previously, perhaps before the introduction of the machine gun or even the current rifle. A mere 6 weeks were allowed to prepare these boys and older reservists for battle against the hardened professionals of the British Expeditionary Force. Fortunately for RIR 242, they did at least have the exceedingly unusual benefit of a peacetime regular commander, Oberstleutnant Friedrich Pudor of IR 178. This advantage would be lost almost immediately at First Ypres, as Pudor was commandeered for service with an ad hoc brigade staff on 21st October. That same afternoon, RIR 242 was committed from Corps Reserve to support 54th Reserve Division, and ended up on the Corps' extreme left flank at the Medin Road. After several days exchanging fire with the British at Kruseich, the regiment was finally committed to a full-scale attack on the burning village on the dark and rainy evening of the 25th, in conjunction with units of 3rd Cavalry Division on their left. Curt Penther took part in this attack and would subsequently describe it in a letter to his sweetheart from hospital, having been wounded in action a week later.
Reserve-Lazarett 2, Abteilung 3, Groß Auheim, near Hanau am Main, 10th November 1914. My dear Marta, you would scarcely believe how hard it is for me to write. I can't hold the paper still. My left hand is abominably painful. The day before yesterday, the doctor made an incision from the little finger almost halfway along the back of the hand. It hurts something rotten, but I have comrades here who endure far worse. The pus oozed right out, and the doctor washed it all off with hydrogen peroxide. Hopefully it will be better soon. You've probably already heard about the fighting our regiment was involved in. I will never forget Kruiswijk, Geluwe, etc. The Balsener Nachrichten has published a pretty account of it, how our 242 went into battle. It concerns our storming of Kruiswijk on the 25th October, where from 240 men at roll call, only 93 returned. Those were the losses from my company alone. Just think of the losses for the whole regiment. On 1st November, the day I was wounded, there were only about 200 men left out of 3,000. It's truly heart-wrenching to walk across the battlefield after an attack and see so many comrades with broken eyes or dreadful mutilations. This demands nerves of steel, but it's possible to become used to anything. I will describe to you one episode which shows how a fellow's thoughts turn to his God out here. It was on the evening of the 25th. We were all still in our trench, ready for the signal from our leader to advance to the assault. Then suddenly someone, I don't know who, struck up the hymn, Hara meine Seele. We all began to sing softly and earnestly, then louder, and finally the song thundered up to the Almighty, Hara des Herrn. With this song, we stormed forwards into combat, to death, but also to victory. And now, farewell, my darling. Do send my love to your good lady mother too, with best wishes for her recovery, with another heartfelt kiss. Your Kurt.
The Regimental History of RAR 242, published in 1924, makes no mention of singing in the fighting for Kruiswijk. Singing by troops of 27th Reserve Corps at First Ypres, however, is certainly mentioned in Volume 2, published 1920, of the Saxon quasi-official history Saxon in großer Zeit. The author, Generalmajor zur Disposition Arthur Baumgarten Crucius, had in 1914 been an Oberst and the first commander of RIR 245. He proudly describes a singing attack by his regiment in the fighting around Besselara on 20th October, the first day of the battle.
There, for the first time, Oberst-Leutnant Hazer, the courageous commander of the 1st Battalion Reserve Infantry Regiment 245, storming forward ahead of his own men, struck up the song Deutschland, Deutschland über alles, which was to become the battle song of the keen young Leipzig regiment and the death song of so many heroes in the annihilating combat of the next few days.
Saxon in großer Zeit further asserts that the other regiments participating in the assault followed the example of RIR 245, quoting Hermann Stegemann's popular Geschichte des Kriegers as corroboration. Baumgarten Crucius was wounded on the 21st by friendly artillery fire, invalided out, and never returned to the front. Our second book, For King and Kaiser, includes a lengthy account by his successor, Major Alfred von Hagendorf, who would arrive in Besselara to assume command of RAR 245 on the 24th. Too late to meet the courageous Oberstleutnant A.D. August Heser, who had been killed in action on the 23rd. Baumgarten Crucius's account is fully in accordance with the singing attacks eulogized in German newspapers. Penther's is strikingly different, primarily in the choice of song, not patriotic, but rather purely religious. Harre meine Seele, Abide my soul, is a solemn hymn expressing patient trust in God in the face of adversity beyond one's control, and implicitly in the face of death. Undoubtedly, many of Penther's comrades did not survive the attack, although we have no daily casualty figures to refer to. The defenders were hardened professional soldiers in well-prepared defences, although they had been subjected to prolonged and intense bombardment. The regimental history of RIR 242 insists that this was still quite inadequate to suppress the British, and the attacking battalions had to struggle across open ground raked by shrapnel and machine gun fire. Nevertheless, they succeeded in storming a trench held by elements of 2nd Scots Guards and breaking through the village in bitter hand-to-hand fighting, during which all unit cohesion was lost. The British clung on firmly to their trenches on the village perimeter, despite the threat of encirclement, and counter-attacked with 2 fresh companies a little before 1 a.m. on the 26th. Their second attempt forced RIR 242 to abandon most of the ground it had taken, and according to the British official history, nearly 200 officers and men were cut off and captured. Oberstleutnant Garten, commanding 3rd Battalion RIR 242, was among those killed in a futile attempt to break through to their trapped comrades. Alongside units of 3rd Cavalry Division, RIR 242 assaulted Kruisijk again on the morning of 26th October after a renewed bombardment. Acting Commander Oberstleutnant Hammer was among the first to die. This enraged his men, who attacked with great aggression, and it was now the turn of the British to abandon Kruisijk in a desperate hurry. Of 2 companies of 2nd Battalion the Border Regiment, only 70 men escaped. 2 companies of 2nd Scots Guards were entirely cut off, as was most of a company of the Grenadier Guards, the remainder of which managed to fight their way out. The British official history estimates a total of 9 officers and 300 men captured, while RIR 242 claimed to have taken more than 400, including what they call a regimental commander. Many of the Saxon wounded from the previous night were found in the cellars of the village, having been treated chivalrously by the British. As Penther laments, his regiment's losses at First Ypres were indeed grievous. The regimental history states that by the time RIR 242 was very briefly relieved from the battlefront on the night of 9th to 10th November, its fighting strength was down from around 3,000 to a mere 380 men. Not as low as Penther's estimate, but still horrifying and sadly not atypical for the infantry of 27th Reserve Corps. Of the 4 eyewitnesses from the Corps, whose personal accounts of this battle are featured in Fighting the Kaiser's War, 3 were wounded there, and 2 of those shot in the head, a testament to the lethal marksmanship of the British regulars. Penther himself, however, survived with relatively light wounds, and was soon sent on an Offiziers Aspirantenkursus, a training course for prospective officers, returning to RIR 242 in autumn 1915 with the rank of Vizefeldwebel der Reserve. He would soon establish a formidable reputation as a fearless leader of trench raids and forward patrols. At the end of 1916, he received his officer's commission as a Lieutenant der Reserve. Curt would continue to serve and to lead raids for the duration of the war. He was highly decorated, most notably in 1918 with the Ritterkreuz des Militaires St. Heinrichsordens, the Knight's Cross of the Order of St. Henry, the highest Saxon and oldest German gallantry order. Somehow he was never wounded again, at least not seriously enough to feature in the Verlustlisten. His brother Georg was less fortunate. killed in action in Prussian service at Verdun in March 1916. Still with RIR 242, Curt survived the Somme, the Russian Kerensky offensive of July 1917, the Kaiserschlacht of spring 1918, and the long, slow death of his division in desperate defensive fighting against French and Americans that summer. He was still there when 53rd Reserve Division and all of its remaining infantry regiments were disbanded in the Argonne in late September due to catastrophic losses. Curt would spend the final weeks of the war with Reserve Infantry Regiment 103, which was still fighting as late as the 4th of November. After demobilization, Curt Penther returned to civilian life and joined the Fire Brigade, rising to the position of Branddirektor, Fire Chief, of Lobau. During World War II, he was recalled to service and is known to have reached the rank of Hauptmann, though his unit has not yet been identified. A selection of Penther's letters from 1914 to 1916 are featured in our first book, Fighting the Kaiser's War, including his report of a raid he led against the British in the Auchy-les-Labassés sector in August 1916. A large lot of Penther's correspondence from 1914 to 1918 was acquired many years ago by Jürgen when the late officer's effects, including his medals, appeared at auction in Germany. What we know of Curt Penther is derived almost entirely from these letters, supplemented by what mentions we have found of him so far in official sources. We would be most interested to hear from anyone in possession of other parts of Penther's legacy, especially photos from his First World War military service.